I think the true self is what we call a soul, but that's still, doesn't really say because we all have a different idea of that. But for me, what that means is it's the essence that I've carried with me throughout all my lifetimes. It's the essence that will continue on after I'm gone and when I return. And I think that our life's journey is to discover, to discover our true self and to, emerge as more whole each time around in each incarnation. Hi, friends. This is Dina Saalisi, and welcome to your superior self.
Oh, beautiful. Well done, Dina. Thank you so much for taking the time. This is going to be a fantastic, colorful conversation.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks for having me here, Trey.
So we were talking a little bit beforehand. I got your card deck, or I don't know exactly what is the terminology for this, right? Like, is it deck? Is it?
Yeah, we you can call it an oracle deck. I also like to call it an art card deck because the cards are so beautiful and they were hand drawn by a friend of mine, Audrey Violet. And so yeah, but a lot of people are referring to it as oracle deck.
Mm-hmm. What's the magic behind this, right? Like, I may have had one or two um, experiences with an Oracle deck. What's the philosophy behind that?
So I think the philosophy is that when we're looking for meaning, right? When we're trying to connect with deeper meaning in our lives, we can use things like Oracle deck. And the idea is that you can draw a card at random, and oftentimes, if not always, it relates to something maybe that you're going through or just a phrase that like you kind of like need to hear to wake up, right? And we've all had that experience. I mean, sometimes even I'm just out in the world, and if you look for a sign, you find one, right?
Hmm.
So it's kind of like that. But this deck is a little bit different because it is based on the Bach flower remedies. So there's 39 cards based on the 38 flowers and the one combination remedy that Dr. Edward Bach created. And when I was developing it, well, I was actually going through training to be a flower therapist, and I was trying to memorize the indications for the 38 flowers. So I'm a writer and a poet, and I just started writing little 3-line affirmations for each one. And that really helped me to remember the meanings of each flower. And then I started giving it to clients. When I would give them their flower remedy formula, I would give them the affirmations that I created for each flower. And across the board, everybody was like, wow, this is really great. It really helps me to ground more into the experience. So for me, I really see this deck as a way to connect with the flowers more intimately, more deeply, so that we can kind of like figure out, unearth what it is inside of ourselves that needs to heal, that needs to be invoked, I guess. That's the word.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. So how did you come across Dr. Bach? Is that his name? His work, right? Um, I know he was a doctor a long time ago in the 30s,
Yeah.
and got tired of treating people's symptoms and
Yeah,
found a
exactly.
pattern between people's emotions and their diagnoses. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, so he was a physician. He was also a homeopath. He's from England. So, in England, they kind of blend modalities. It's not just straight doctoring. So this was about 100 years ago. And yeah, he was kind of like intuiting that when he saw his patients, that he wasn't satisfied with just diagnosing their symptoms and giving them a prescription or, even a diagnosis. He really felt certain that our emotions are really what govern our physical health. And now, nearly 100 years later, there's so much information about that. And I think we've all experienced that, right? That it's like if you're in a negative mindset, you can't really make change, whether it's emotional or physical. So he really he went out into nature and he worked with himself first, and he discovered these 38 flowers that he deemed to hold this healing energy, and each one relates to a different emotional challenge. So it's really a brilliant system because I'm a health coach, and when I meet with clients, people come to see me because they're suffering, right? Everyone wants to feel better. And worse yet, if you're dealing with a physical illness, you really want it to go away. I mean, I've been there. But oftentimes, when we're not really looking within, when we're not looking at what's going on in my life right now, or, what are my feelings in my body and how does this illness make me feel, or, kind of what was going on when it developed. If we're not looking at those indicators, we really don't get very far. We don't usually progress very far. I mean, sometimes allopathic medicine works, but more often than not, what ends up happening is we might get better for a little while and then another symptom will pop up, right? And it's not until we're suffering so hard that we're willing to do anything. And oftentimes, like, somebody will offer us an alternative therapy, and then we'll start to progress. So that's kind of my story. And, that happens with my clients all the time. Like, people come to me, like one woman, it was pretty notable. She was suffering with MS. And she didn't have it her whole life. It came on in her late 40s. And she couldn't even get out of bed in the morning. And I started working with her. And pretty much right away, when we kind of unpacked that it happened when she lost her job, she was in a managerial position. She felt like she had no control over her life. And suddenly her body started breaking down. And we worked together for about 4 months. By the end of 4 months, she was up out of bed. She took on volunteer work. She was like a completely different person. And we didn't deal with her physical symptoms at all because I'm not a doctor. That's not my domain. So I'm not going to tell people what they should do with their body. It's more like we're going to work on spiritual awareness and emotional health and that kind of thing. And that always seems to get us further. Wouldn't you agree?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. How did you get into this type of work, right? Like, what's your journey? How did that
Yeah.
form? How did that take form for you and finding power in the essence of flowers, right? Like that subtle energy that I had no idea, right? Like that existed. Now it totally changed my perspective on, how I approach, how I look and communicate with different flowers and their essence and um, personalities, right? Like they all have different personalities, which is very fascinating to me. Um, so there's a lot there, right? But can you unpack that a little bit for me?
There is a lot there. And first, I want to say I love hearing you say that it's changed your lens on flowers, because that's really kind of my mission in life, is to kind of make everyone aware of this energy that's out there, and it's palpable. Like, we can feel it. We, when we're in the presence of nature, we feel it. We know it. So I got involved with flower therapy many years ago, about 30 years ago. And I guess I've always been a sensitive person. I've always been intuitive. I've always been into self-healing, self-improvement methods. And then one day I stumbled upon Dr. Bach's book, Heal Thyself. I was at a metaphysical bookstore in Greenwich Village. And I was fascinated. I was like, okay, I'd heard of herbalism before, but I hadn't really heard about using the energy of flowers. But as soon as I got into it, it makes perfect sense. I mean, everything's energy, right? It's all about energy. And, just being able to connect with flowers in this way was fascinating for me. So for about 20 plus years, I did kind of self-study. I just bought remedies and tried them. And I saw how they were improving my own challenges. And then I started giving it to friends, family. And then it wasn't until about 10 years ago where I kind of, I wanted to add it to my healing arts practice. Like I said, I was a health coach, and I'm like, well, what would happen if I gave my coaching clients a flower remedy at the end of the session? And I started doing this. And what I noticed was, I hung out with other health coaches, that my clients were having better results, like they were healing at a more quicker rate. And I really feel like this was because this was such a great method for putting them more in tune with their emotional challenges. Because when we're using the lens of a flower, right, it takes like all the sting out of our challenge. So like there's 7 different categories that Dr. Bach has. And so the first one is fear. So when someone comes to me and they're talking about the fears they're having, we can just right away break it down. And he's got like 5 different flowers for fear. So we can kind of look at the different ways that fear shows up. And it's not simply like maybe I'm just afraid of public speaking. Maybe it's deeper than that. And we have to work on more of a sense of safety, right? So there's just these different lenses that we can use that I find it just such a beautiful, soft way, And so then at the end of the session, I'll tell the people the flowers that I'm considering, and I'll break it down to them in terms of what the challenge is and what the flower offers. And when I look at my clients, they always have like this really serene look on their face, and they're like, thank you so much, that it really feels like a gift rather than just talking about, well, this is your fear and this is what you need to do about it. Like that doesn't really resonate with a lot of people. So, sometimes I liken it to astrology. Like astrology is, so ancient, from Mesopotamia, right?
Mhm.
And it's an esoteric system. It's a typology. It's not written in stone, right? Like it's something we believe in. And even people who don't believe in it, we've grown to accept, like there's 12 different types and people fall into these categories based on the energy of the stars, how they were aligned when they were born. Well, I find the flowers to be similar, that there's energy in these flowers. And like I said, Dr. Bach developed 38 essences, but now there's hundreds. Like his system has spread far and wide. There's like 300 flower essence manufacturers worldwide. There's thousands of remedies. I work with others besides the Bach system. And it's just beautiful because they all hold this special energy, and people just really love to connect with it. So I really just found it so nourishing that I
Mhm.
wanted to learn more and really share it with others.
Sure. Do you think it's the belief that we hold that heals us, or do you think it's the energy from the flowers that heal us?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
Having said that, though, I do give remedies to animals and children, people who, don't have any idea what they're taking, and they still work. So for me, I'm a true believer. Like I've worked with horses, I've worked with cats, I've worked with dogs, and they change. So for me, that speaks true to the energy. But I also think that belief is a powerful tool. So that is the affirmation part. Like, I really think you could use the affirmations without even using the remedies, and it would change your mindset. I've had
Sure.
that experience myself.
So how do you use this, right? Like, is it the affirmations on the card? Like, so if I'm feeling, fear based, I go to your book and I search the remedies for fear, and then I just read the cards that I resonate with. Is that how that works?
Yeah, that's one way. I mean, I think that we all have a different way to connect with psycho-spiritual work, right? But I think that's perfect what you just said. Yeah, you can look up the different indications and say, okay, that sounds like it's right for me. And then work with the affirmation. I mean, we all know Louise Hay, right? She's like the godmother of
Yeah.
affirmation. And, her book sold like something like 50 million copies. Like it, right. Right. So, and I mean, I still work with her affirmations. And one of the things I noticed that I think is really fascinating, like some of her affirmations are so basic and simple, like it is safe for me to be alive. That's one that I had to work with being an abuse survivor. And for years, I couldn't remember the words. Like it's a simple sentence, right? And I remember everything. I have a great memory. So that was kind of a red flag to me that I really needed to do more work in this area in, essential safety, well-being, because I couldn't remember the words. And then as soon as I started remembering it, like it was just like coming to me during the day when I felt unsafe, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm really making progress because it's resonating. So I think part of it is the resonance, right?
I know I resonated with this. I can't even say the word Centauri. Is that how you say it? Like the
Worry.
card?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I don't know if you see that or not. I opened your pack, right? And this is the first time I've ever dealt with an Oracle card. I didn't really know how to use them, right? I don't even know the process. I just kind of was like, all right, I just closed my eyes and pulled one out. And it totally resonated with me, right? Like I feel like I was meant to pull this card. And on it, it has three affirmations, which I totally vibe with. I follow my life's path with determination. I fulfill my own needs with a strong will, and I honor myself, and I know I am deserving. Wow. I read that and I was like, oh, you got me right on because, throughout my life, it's always been I've had issues with a strong will, right? Like giving up before it was time to, before I could see my effort come to fruition. Um, and a lot of that has to do with my idea of deserving something, right? Like that self-worth idea, that the conditions of worth that were programmed in me from a young age. And this kind of, well, the art is very um, magnetic where I connect with it, right? And um, just totally vibe with it. And I'm not just saying that, like totally, like this is the first time I've ever worked with Oracle cards and um, can't even say half the flowers names, but it's just like, it's so beautiful. I mean, the way that they're drawn and the affirmations, the I ams, right? Like, um, putting that into our consciousness and letting that simmer for a bit and how does that resonate in our hearts and then moving forward with that healing, what that looks like. I think for me, working on that self-worth is a priority because you don't know what you don't know, right? And you have a background in hypnotherapy, and it's like bringing that unconscious to the conscious and finding out what it is that we've experienced up to this point that we're not even aware of, right? Like from our either past lives or from when we were young children, some of the experiences that our brain is in defense mode, so it hides it from us, so we don't think about it. And when you connect with it, it comes up, and then it's in your body, and you got to heal it, right? Or else it's going to stay there and turn into some type of disease or emotional disorder. So these cards, I feel like, are a great tool for people to kind of unlock that for themselves. Look into the shadow to really find out who they are, and then have like support in the affirmations to help them guide them through that process, so that way they can come out more confident and have. I feel like I mean, just from reading my card, I mean, I feel a great resonance with it. And I know that you have some pretty amazing stories to go with that throughout your work. Um, but I've never thought about flowers as being like this subtle energy that can do this type of work, right? Like I feel like we kind of overlook them a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for saying all of that. That's really deep and meaningful. And yeah, I do feel like we overlook it, which is interesting to me because I feel like flowers are like the earth's nature's manifestation of love. I mean, they're such a high manifestation of life force energy, are they not? I mean, there's millions of different kinds. The colors are natural. I mean, just look behind me. It's like they are so delicious and so supportive that it just makes perfect sense that they would hold healing energy, right?
Hmm. Do you communicate with them? Like, can you, I mean, they are consciousness, right? They can give us wisdom. Have you received any of that from them?
I do. I go on wildflower hikes quite often, quite regularly. In fact, I go to the same places year after year, and I've come to know where specific wildflowers grow on the path. And so, like, I go visit them. But, like, for instance, this was just a couple of weeks ago. My best friend and I were in the Napa Valley, and we took a wildflower hike, and I didn't know what we would find because it was kind of early in the season, and we came upon this stand of shooting star. And these flowers, like, they are so unusual. They're like this pink purple, and they actually look like little rocket ships going up into the sky. They're amazing. And they're actually one of the flower remedies from the Flower Essence Society in California. And my friend and I, she's a flower grower. We literally just sat there and like got down on our hands and knees and just looked at them in awe and communed with them. And There is a subtle vibration that you can feel. I mean, honestly, if you put your hands over the flowers, you can feel the energy. And then when you take your hands away, you can feel not the energy. So there's definitely energy that you feel. And I know what a lot of the flowers that I find are for. So I can kind of attune to the energy right away. And shooting star is for it's funny because it's got like this star, right? It goes up to the heavens. And it's for when we've come into the earth feeling like we don't belong here. And I actually hear that from a lot of people where they feel like they don't belong on planet Earth. And part of it, I think, is, trauma that maybe is carried over from past lives or ancestral trauma, even. But then sometimes, like just being a sensitive person in the world, you don't feel understood. And
Hmm.
I know that was sort of my experience of not feeling understood as a small child. And so the shooting star kind of brings you into your body, but keeps the cosmic connection. So it really is a deep flower and it's just so beautiful. So yes, that's the long answer for yes, I do communicate with them in person because I can, because we all can. And that's something like when I ask a client when someone's struggling with feeling grounded or even feeling safe in the world, I say, well, what's something that makes you feel safe? 99% of the time people say nature. That's just really the
Hmm.
response. We all know that it feels nourishing and safe to be out in nature. So I tell people just go sit in your garden, even if it's 10 minutes a day, see what happens. They come back and everybody's like, yeah, I really feel more connected to the earth. Thereby, I feel more connected to myself.
Hmm.
So I feel like, earth energy and flowers is just sort of like a foundation that we can use for self connection.
Hmm. What do you think the self is, the true self?
The true self. I think the true self is what we call a soul, but that's still, doesn't really say because we all have a different idea of that. But for me, what that means is it's the essence that I've carried with me throughout all my lifetimes. It's the essence that will continue on after I'm gone and when I return. And I think that our life's journey is to discover to discover our true self and to, emerge as more whole each time around in each incarnation.
Hmm. Hmm. Have you always looked at it like that? Like, have you always had that outlook, right? Like of like reincarnation, the whole self connecting with that.
Yeah.
Um, what did that look like for you, right? Like, just, I mean, even the flower work, right? Like, when you first
Mhm.
started out with this, did you have people like, what are you talking about? Flowers healing people, right?
Still, still, still. But the thing is, I think one of my aces is that I'm a very practical person. So when people meet me, like they think I'm really practical and serious and earnest. I'm a teacher. I'm a philosopher. I love philosophy. I love intellectualism, but I really believe that we're overly intellectualized, that we need to balance it more with our soul work. So for me, oftentimes it's about helping people get out of intellect and get more into trusting intuition. So, yes, like I've always been intuitive and I've always trusted my inner knowing and trusted that I'm right about the energetic value of things and that going inward is the way to transcend. Yes, I've always known this. Like when people ask me, how long have you been doing this work? My answer is centuries,
So
because
you've
that's,
did you come
yeah,
into this life knowing, right? Like as a young girl?
I came into this life knowing, except when I was a small child, I struggled with it because I didn't know that I knew. And I didn't understand why other people didn't see the world the way I saw it. I thought that everybody saw it the way I saw it. And so when people were looking at me like, well, what do you mean, you feel the energy that's in the room? Or what do you mean that like affirmations? I used to make up affirmations when I was a small child when I would feel scared. Like one that I made up is when I was little, I used to say, I love God and God loves me, and that's why I live happily. And I made it up because I was afraid as a child, and that used to make me feel safe. And now, I've come to realize that for me, God is the omnipresent God. Like for me, God is nature. Nature is the one source of energy that nourishes every living being on the planet. ever since the dawn of time. Like, we can't equivocate about that. It's the one source of energy. There's nothing else that nourishes us. And so to me, that transcends religion.
Mm.
That is the one thing. And I just really, believe that if we could all get on that page, there could be no destruction, because we would all, and I feel like the indigenous people knew that, right? And that's sort of why we've eradicated them, is because they had this wisdom that wouldn't allow for destruction, that wouldn't allow for war. And, they were still humans, so they weren't perfect, but they were in tune with earth energy. And the more we can attune to that, the more, like I said before, we can be self-realized, and we can just be in that presence of love. And that doesn't mean that everything is going to be perfect. There's still going to be suffering. There's days when I suffer. There's days when I feel challenged. But I know that I can attune to this deeper wisdom to kind of work through it, process through it, that it's not about being perfect. And, that's kind of one of my gripes with Western medicine is, taking a drug or doing an operation to eradicate illness is wrong, because you're never going to eradicate suffering. So for me, I feel like it's better to just, get really good at self-awareness and get really good at spiritual practices, so that when the challenges come, I know what to do, that I'm
Mhm.
not reliant on an external source. That's not to say that sometimes we don't need to use external sources, but when I do need to use an external source, I want to be as spiritually strong as I can be, so that I can pick the best practitioners and that I can let my intuition guide me and not just be given what someone else tells me to use.
Mm, it's beautiful. Do you ever feel like because you're a healer, like you have to be healthy all the time, right? Like I feel like there's added pressure on you because you're a healer that you have to portray a certain stereotype almost.
Absolutely not. I think that the healers that I'm trying to grow, because I do teach people how to, get in touch with their healer self and be their best healer, are, I think the best message is to accept the imperfection in the human condition. So, hell no, I'm not perfect. I have hard days. I fight with my partner. Sometimes I do things I'm ashamed of. Sometimes I'm imperfect. And I think recognizing that is the first step to being a good healer, because anybody who tells you that they're better than all of that and that they've transcended, that's not true. That's not real. I mean, life is real and life is hard. And, there's a lot of suffering, but there's also a lot of joy that's available. So it's always about finding the balance and finding what works for you. I do spend the first 2 hours of my morning doing psycho-spiritual work. And, that makes me a good healer, because I know what I'm doing. I can help people know what they're doing because I practice. I do think that's important. But some mornings it's hard. Some mornings I struggle. Sometimes I'm sad. Sometimes I'm angry. That's all real. And, knowing how to work with it is what makes me a good healer.
Psycho spiritual work. What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, I think that we're using, the energy of psychology, right? Which is powerful energy. There's a lot of really good information, but we're kind of using our spiritual awareness to work with it. So again, it's like mind, body, spirit. When we talk about spirit, that's our spirituality. But there's a lot to be worked with in philosophical ideas. And I mean, there's so many great writers, so many great philosophers that have created all this awareness that then we can go inward and do our own
Hmm.
personal work with it,
Hmm.
right?
So what does that look like? Like you say, for the first 2 hours of your morning, you're doing that psycho spiritual work. Are you going in there to heal others? Are you going in there for your own personal spiritual growth? Are you receiving wisdom? Are you connecting with source? Is it all of the above?
Yeah, it's all of the above. And I can share with you, yeah, I haven't been asked too much what I specifically do, but I'll briefly share. So I do get up before the sun, and that's just naturally, I've always done that. The first thing I do is I do qigong. I do like a 10-minute qigong practice because I've been lying in bed and I just want to get the energy to move through my body. So once I get the energy to move through my body, I light a candle and I say a prayer. And it's a Buddhist prayer. It's may all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. And that to me is just I'm putting a prayer out to the world that, I want to put that out there to alleviate suffering. And then I do a prayer for my family, for my loved ones. And then I do my journaling. So I encourage everyone to do early morning journaling. If they can do that first thing in the morning, it's good. Because what you do is you just put everything down on paper that's maybe left over from the day before, any dreams that I had that night. And I just leave it there. I give it to the page to hold. And then what I do, and this is kind of later on, but every new and full moon, I go back and I read my journals. And it is really important to go back and reread because that's when you have all the awarenesses. That's when all the light bulbs go off. But so in the morning after I do my journaling, then I do my affirmations and then I do my meditation practice. So I do, usually I do silent meditation, but sometimes I'll do like a guided if I'm working something out. And that's kind of the place where I'll discover like what needs to be worked with. Like if I'm doing silent meditation and there's feelings in my body or my mind is kind of like, niggling at me, then I'll kind of be like, okay, what do I need to do? I might need to do an inner child work. I might need to commune with my spirit guides. I might need to, read something inspirational. And yeah, then that's pretty much my psycho-spiritual work. And then I do yoga, which I've been doing for 30 years every morning. And then I get on with my day.
Is this on the beach at all? Because I feel like this needs to be on the beach.
Oh, that would be so nice. Only when I was in Hawaii did I do it on the
Oh,
beach. Now, usually I'm in my room, but I create really beautiful spaces for myself.
when you work with your guides, can you see them? Like, or are you envisioning them, or are you using your third eye? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so spirit guide practice, I run people through spirit guide practice because I think when you're trying to strengthen your healer self, like who does the healer go to for support? That's our spirit guides. So I'll run everybody through a spirit guide practice. And I feel like there's a divine feminine and a divine masculine part. And again, that has nothing to do with gender. The feminine and masculine can appear to you in any way. It could be a blob that's a color. It doesn't have to be, a man or a woman. So, but why I adopt a feminine and a masculine spirit guide is because I feel like there is feminine, for lack of a better way to put it, that those are just the words we all understand. And like we all understand feminine energy to be intuitive, to be nurturing. That's just how we understand it, right? And we understand masculine energy to be supportive, encouraging. That's the will is the masculine energy. So I like everybody to have these two spirit guides, and I have my own. So when I run you through the practice, you just meet them and you allow whatever emerges to emerge. So I have my guides. And when I'm having a particularly hard time and I really need answers that are kind of outside of myself, but I don't want to go to like, external humans. And sometimes I do go to my friends, but I kind of want to see what's in the psycho-spiritual realm. I'll go to my spirit guides. And I just allow them to offer me whatever there is, and I take it. And sometimes I'll write it down, sometimes I'll just sit with it. It's always right, it's always what I need to hear. And it's funny because when I run people through spirit guide practice, they'll come out of it and they'll be like, wow, that was amazing. Now I have these entities that are my helpers. But they'll always ask the question, how do I know it was real? Because they imagined it, right? And I'm like, well, first of all, your imagination is real because you're experiencing it. Anything you experience is real. And even if you're just making it up, if it offers you support, then that's real, right? Feeling supported is real. So, our emotions real? We feel them, we can't see them, they're invisible. Yeah, they're real. So that again, that's the intellect telling you if you can't prove it, it's not real. Well, try it, see what you think. And, the other thing is, this is like another practice I love is, if you want to see if something's real, you can ask yourself a question. Maybe you're struggling with something and you need to ask yourself a question. What do I do about such and such? Okay, ask yourself the question and look up and then get the answer. You're going to have a very intellectual answer. Now close your eyes and ask yourself the same answer. The answer that comes is always different, and it's always probably more what you need to hear.
Mm. That divine intelligence, right? Like that
Exactly. Yeah.
that wisdom that comes from our being, right? Like, yeah, because I do that too. Like I'll ask a question and an answer will come from somewhere. I have no idea where it comes from. It just comes, right? And it feels good. But how do we connect with that more, right? Like, is it just taking that time out and like just taking a deep breath and closing our eyes and just connecting with that? Does it have to be the heart? Can it be something else like our chest area or maybe our chakra systems and just focusing in on that and then just asking the question and see what arises?
I'm smiling at you because I love that you're asking the question, then you're kind of answering it for you in your way. And so I think you're making a beautiful point that it's going to be different for everybody. But I think if you have a willingness, right? If you're willing, if you're ready to go inward and you have a willingness to get to know yourself better, you're going to discover. I mean, there's so many books out there, there's so many approaches. You're going to discover what works for you. Flowers work for me. I've turned a lot of people onto flowers who didn't even know about flower energy, and it works for them. It's not going to work for everybody. I'd say probably 1% of all the people I've ever worked with just didn't really get off on flower energy. I've had people who had to come back years later who didn't see it for many years. But I think there's so many different approaches. And as long as you're willing to make friends with yourself and accept that everything is fuel for transformation, then there you are, then you're going to do what needs to be done. And even if that's just like taking a walk on your lunch break and, listening to the birds sing, that could be one way. If it's going to be journaling, that could be another way. If it's going to be meditation or all of the above, it doesn't
Hmm.
matter as long as you're willing and you trust in it.
Sure. I just think it can be overwhelming for people, especially with all the literature out there about healing and self-healing and touching, getting in touch with that inner innate consciousness, right? Like there's so much out there that people kind of get overwhelmed, especially on YouTube, right? Like there's a ton of teachers, modalities. What's the best one for me? I want to know what has the most reviews, like what's got the 5 stars? What's the best self-healing? What's this, and that? And I think to your point, it's going within and like really figuring that out for yourself. Like I have to do that for me too, is like I love reading great philosophers' work, right? But every one of them has a different perspective. Like
Yeah.
even in like traditional psychotherapy, there's like a ton of theories, behaviorism, cognitive, was it CBT theories, psychoanalytics, psychodynamic. There's a ton of them, right? And it's like finding the thing that works for you, whether it be meditation, and it can look different for you, right? And it's not wrong or good. It's just like whatever works for you, whatever you feel like you're tapping into, like whatever helps you tap into that self, right? And receive the answers that you need to get at the right time, right? For you, it's flowers. For me, it used to be like guided meditations. Um, but I felt like I was trying too hard to connect with something through their methods, right? Like Joe Dispenza has some really good meditations, and then a couple others have some really good guided meditations. But I felt like I was just trying too hard to use their modality or methodology, and I had to find my own path, right? So now I've gone to silent meditations and focusing on the breath and observing the thoughts, and I can feel things in my body rise up, right? Like things from the past that kind of like I put so much conscious effort in suppressing. Now they're starting to come up and bubble, and like I'm like, oh, never felt that since I was a kid, but here it is, and let's focus in on that, right? Like, what is this? What is this from, right? And um, catharsis is a great way to experience the past, but it could suck. It can suck. because all of that energy that you've been suppressing since you know, you were a kid or maybe a past life comes up and you don't know exactly what it's from. And um, it can be triggering but it can be relieving too, right?
Yeah, well, yes, I do think that when you're getting into self-healing work, there is a lot of pain there. There can be a lot of pain there for sure, especially if you've suffered trauma. And for me, I suffered a lot of childhood trauma. And so I've always done self-healing work. But one of the things I love about the flowers is that it supports and nourishes us in such a way that it sort of takes the severe pain out of the work, right? So like it's interesting in hearing you talk, like it's not, and in hearing you talk about meditation, it's not even so much that you were doing these meditations, then you don't do them anymore. Your meditation practice has evolved, I would say, is what
Hmm.
happened. And so when you talk about people feeling overwhelmed and not knowing where to begin, and then if you get on YouTube, yeah, that could be a downward spiral because there's maybe too much out there and then you feel discouraged. So I think that what needs to happen if you're entering into this kind of work is, like I said before, the word is trust, trusting in your ability to heal, that we all have the seed of self-healing within us. I know this for a fact. So I'm here to tell anybody who feels discouraged that you have it within you. So there's that trust. But then there's also the trust in, like you're saying, your inner knowing in what it is you need, because everyone needs something different. So that's interesting. There is a flower for that, and that's the Serato flower. So Serato helps us to get more in touch with our inner knowing, to trust our inner wisdom, and to not go outside of ourselves to be told what we need. So I'm really a firm believer in, you already know, you already have the answers. You can do really simple self-inquiry, like close your eyes. What do I need to heal? An answer is going to come. And sometimes it's scary. Sometimes it's not the answer you want. And maybe you might put that aside for a while until you're ready. So, like, that's another part of it. I'm a health coach, and we talk about the different stages of development and when people aren't really ready. And sometimes people aren't quite ready yet. So you can take kind of small bites, like go really easy on yourself. I like to tell people, and just do what feels good. Sometimes the internet isn't the best place, even though there is so much information. Sometimes if you're overwhelmed, it's good to take a break. Like go to a bookstore instead, right? Like the right book falls into your lap. And like they say, the teacher will arrive when the student is ready. And I'm a firm believer in that. So just being open to all that's out there and trusting that you're going to get on the right path, or you are on the right path, and the right people are going to also be on that path.
I love that. Allowing it to unfold the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Um, Dr. Bach's emergency formula, right? Like, what does that what does that look like, right? Like, I know there's some powerful where is it at? I think is it this one? I'm focused, calm, and alert. I am guided by steadiness and strength. Clarity and peace wash over my soul. When do people have to use this formula, this emergency
Yeah,
formula?
so that's the rescue. It's known by the brand name of Rescue Remedy. I'm sure you've seen it. Have you not
Mm-mm.
seen it?
No, no.
Okay, well, it's in most apothecaries and health food stores, but Rescue Remedy, most people do know about it because it's the one combination formula that Bach made. So it's got 5 flowers, and it addresses any acute, intense feelings. So he developed it because he recognized that sometimes it wasn't always easy to give people a flower remedy in the moment if something severe had happened. So it's for accidents. It's for, if I just got into a fight with my partner and I'm feeling, when you feel like that shaky feeling and you can't calm down, right? It's for like PTSD. It is amazing. I carry it in my purse. Everybody else I know that I've told to does now as well. And you can use it when you're having like acute trauma triggers, I would say. And you just take 4 drops. You can take it every few minutes until you feel a sense of calm. And when I've been in that state, I've never needed to take it for more than, say, 3 doses every 15 minutes until I felt a sense of relief. And so if I work with somebody who's coming to me and they have like a trauma that's kind of on the surface, it's very much alive, I'll give them rescue remedy to use for a few weeks before we talk about other flowers. So it kind of just gets them to a point where they're calm on the inside. So it's for like, yeah, intensity, I would
Mm.
say.
So I'm going to do something fun here. I'm going to pull a card
Okay.
and see. Maybe this is for someone out there. Maybe it's for me. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Maybe I'll pull a card and see what comes up, and then maybe get your feedback on how it can help us. Right. Thank God I have an easy name here. Mustard. Right.
Mustard.
Mustard. Thank God I can pronounce that. I am filled with golden glow. I embrace life with dynamic energy. I awaken to my radiant bliss.
Gorgeous. So
Somebody needs to hear that right now.
yeah, somebody needs to hear this one. Mustard that's interesting that you pulled it now because in terms of an actual flower, it's one of the early blooming flowers. So like we have in Northern California, the mustard fields are aglow right now. So it's one of the first flowers that comes on at the end of winter, and that is relevant to what it's used for. So it is used for sorrow for no known reason. So when we have that sense of like heaviness and gloom that comes on for no known reason, right? We're just like, God, why do I feel funky? Right? It's like the funk. And a lot of people feel this way during the winter months, right? When we don't get the light, we feel that way. So I find it really interesting that this golden bright flower comes on at the end of winter. It always lifts my spirits. And I feel like that's the energy, like that's the energy of it, is to uplift us and imbue us with this light filled energy that's there. Yeah.
Hmm. So when I pull a card like that, right, do you think it's the universe like connecting with us and helping us? There's probably a probability associated with that, right? Like if I go into my analytical mind, but like just thinking about that, do you think it's just me connecting with the source and like the universe and like pulling the card that needs to be revealed to me in this moment right now?
What do you think?
I'm gonna say yes. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think so, right? It's just interesting because I didn't really know what decks were for. Like I've heard of them, right? Like I've heard of so many different decks, in my life. Never really thought about pulling a card, right? And not really um understanding exactly what that means, right? Like so I pull this mustard card and I immediately resonate with it. And I don't know if it's with every card, but like I know that this speaks to me right now, right?
Yeah.
Um just just to your feedback alone, right? Like we're in this time of coming out of winter into spring, and it seems like it's been a long winter, right? Even though in the East Coast we haven't really experienced too cold of a winter, but still, though, I mean, everything that's associated with it, gray, rain, cold, frigid weather, cold temperatures. Like because it's 30 degrees and below, I haven't been able to get out and run as much, right? So there's that vibe there. But the golden glow, right? Like that, I associate that with the sun, right? Like I also get up and I see the sun rise, and it's magnificent. Like it's just so powerful. Like um, how just it's like you're seeing the start of a new, right? A new energy. Like anything can happen today, right? Just from this new sunrise. Like the probabilities of anything happening is just so exciting to me. Like but there's some days where you don't see the sun because it's cloudy, right? But it's still there. Still have faith that it's gonna rise. And so like it really instills a lot of like when I read the mustard card and I think about the golden glow, it like reminds me of the dynamic energy in the sun, how it heals
Yeah.
me, how it empowers me to show up every day in wonder and excitement to like, you know, to hmm, not expect anything to happen, but like be hopeful that whatever happens was for a reason. if any of that makes sense. And I know it
Exactly.
sounds great and it sounds beautiful, beautiful and poetic, but it's like, there's also a human aspect to that, right? Like of life is hard and life is dynamic and it's abstract and it's we want to put it on a schedule and we want to analyze it and we want it to be concrete, but it's not. And I'm just glad we have cards like this that can help me awaken to my radiant bliss. Mustard. Thank you, Mustard, for bringing it back in for me.
Yeah, that is so awesome. And I feel privileged that I'm your first card.
Yeah, this is my first deck. Like, seriously.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. And, it's interesting. So I do think, well, okay, so there's a couple of different things there. So when you're drawing a card, I mean, you can set an intention for another person, right? Like you can do that.
Mhm.
But also, like with any of this work that we're doing, when messages come in, whether it's a card or a message, you can also just ask, with your eyes closed, go inward and ask, is this mine, or does this not belong to me, right? Like sometimes it's for someone else, and we know, like, if you were working with somebody, you might be drawing a card for somebody else. But I do think that this one relates to you. It is interesting because we began the conversation talking about will, divine will. And the will, the solar plexus chakra, right, the color is yellow, and it's the solar force. So it's all
Mm.
connected. I feel like it's all connected. And that seems to me like, some of your work is with divine will and the solar force. And so I'm really happy that you got gifted mustard. How beautiful.
Are you using your intuitive abilities right now, Dina,
I
on
am.
me?
I am. I could do more, but I think we might have to do that another time. Maybe you and I'll have a session together. That would be great.
It's awesome. Dina, thank you so much. How can people find you? How can they buy the card deck? How can they learn more about what it is that you help people to heal?
Yeah, I have a website and it's just my name, dinasaalisi.com. And if you go to look for the deck on my website, I actually am linked to a bookstore that's owned by a woman, and it's books by, for, and about women, and all the proceeds go to helping Black Indigenous people. So it is a really great bookstore. It's called Little Visioneers, but it's available everywhere books are sold, so they can get that. And I teach classes, I meet with clients, I do healing sessions. I have a flower circle that meets once a month. And the first circle is free for anyone who wants to join. You can do so on my website. And we do a guided visualization practice and we talk about flower energy. So it's really wonderful. And at the end of April, I'm teaching an introduction to flower therapy class. It's a 2-hour Zoom class. And I'm here. I love hearing from people. I love getting emails, even if it's questions. I love answering people's questions. So I'm available and I look forward to connecting with anyone.
Thank you, Dina. This has been amazing.
Yeah, thank you. It has. It's been a really great conversation.